Please like and leave a heart. Please.
There we go. Mic 1 position. How about that? This is actually a trick that I use to be able to get people to comment more, because we'll get like 20 no sound comments normally from people who don't actually comment on the show. So can hear you now. Okay. Hello everybody, and welcome to the Vidor Locksmith Show. I'm your host David Gibson, and I have no idea what I'm doing. Well, welcome to the Vidor Locksmith Show, where we are unlocking the secrets to success in the oil and gas industry, one interview, one technical presentation, and one technical script at a time. And the screen's doing the thing that it does that I still haven't been able to troubleshoot and get out of the way. Thank you guys so much for being here. Do appreciate it. This is a show that I've been trying to make happen since essentially the inception of the show. When many of you who've been watching the show for many years first saw it, there was a huge request in the very beginning to be able to get today's guest on the show. Well, today is that day. We've got the amazing Paul Pastusek, and I am super excited about it. So, guys, please let me know where you guys are watching from. Love to be able to give you a shout out here on this show today. Please don't forget, we coming a little hot?
Yes.
Okay. Please don't forget, today's show is brought to you by KeyDrill. And if you put in hashtag KeyDrill into the comment section, now and throughout the rest of the show, you'll be entered in for a box of KeyDrill goodies, which we'll go over at the end when it actually happens. Plus, today's special, we've got two other things that I'm putting out there. So we've got the regular 3D printed drill bit, plus I'm going to give you guys one of the little red crocheted ones that match KeyDrill. So, guys, please be sure to do that. Put that in the comment section. So, let me guys know where you guys are watching from. Love to be able to give everybody a shout out here on the show this morning. Wow, more comments than we've seen in a long time. So, first off, as always, good morning to John DeWart, and he will be on the show next week. Is that right? Yes. I'm just double checking my calendar. Yes, John will be on the show next week. So if you've got any questions for him, start lining them up now. Mr. Ian Persis, good morning from the Woodlands. Thanks for being here. William Watson, tuning in from Perth, Australia. I used to work there. Great place. All right, Sean Emery, thanks for being here. So tuning in from Calgary. Donna's tuning in from Houston, where it says it's 63 degrees. Mm-hmm. Philip is bantering back and forth with William. So Peach Holtzman, tuning in from Oklahoma City. Somebody who I've been begging to get on the show. He said he'd do it. Still going to keep pressuring him. So hopefully he'll come on the show here pretty soon. Then we've got Jim. Somebody from Washington, D.C. is calling me. That can't be important. All right. Then we got the famous LinkedIn user says, good afternoon from the geriatric ward of the UK, a.k.a. Surrey. Okay. To all tuning in from Houston, thanks for being here, sir. Mr. Pete Stetson tuning in from Dallas, Texas. Surprised he's able to get the time away to be able to come hang out with us. It's awesome. Bo Harden, Mustafa from Ottawa. This is when John said about the sound. We got LinkedIn user from Aberdeen. Bobby telling us about the sound. Hervé telling us about sound. LinkedIn user sound. There we go. Ali tuning in from Qatar. All right. Aaron Bailey, we can hear you now. Hello, you're on mute. Got you now. Bobby Grimes there. Works. Okay, getting through these. Patrick B says he can hear us now. Safa 10 out of 10. Yes, shows. I could still read your lips saying any in one technical script at a time. Yes. We got tuning in from Colorado. Jim said tuning in. Bobby Grimes. Eric sound good from Anaheim, California. Wow, this is like I can't even keep up with all of these. Sorry, guys. This is insane. This is doing way better than I ever thought. Okay, I gotta say hi to a couple of people. So got Dave tuning in from Houston, Texas. There was a couple more in here. I'm trying not to somebody else from Houston. Surprise, people are watching from Houston. Who would have thought? All right, let's see here. Robert Esses, former guest here on the show. Thanks for tuning in. Michael's tuning in from Abu Dhabi. Eddie's in Boston. That's not a typical place, nor is Mississippi. So, hey, there we go. Carrie tuning in from Corsicana, the Lake House. Brandon, Houston. Jeff Lund in Salt Lake City. I have my coffee ready. Excited to watch presentation. You watch. Let's dive in. All right. Yes, let's dive in. So let's go through. Okay. Yeah, we've all caught up. Hello from Australia, Western Australia. All right, there. We're all caught up. Thank you, guys. All right, so let's do this. Like I said, put in hashtag KeyDrill for your chance to win on the show today. So here's this, and then we will play our quick clip from KeyDrill. Thank you to our sponsors making this possible, and then we'll be back with our guest of the day.
KeyDrill is at the forefront of MWD technology. Driven by ongoing research and development, our systems are built to be rugged, modular, and customizable, meeting the specific needs of the industry. This dedication has positioned us as leaders in MWD system design and production.
Once again, thank you to KeyDrill. And they did want me to shout out, these guys do have a gyro-while-drilling tool. So if you're interested in that, please get in touch with the guys over at KeyDrill. It's very interesting technology. Not many people around the world have it, but they do. So reach out to them. Special thanks to them for being able to sponsor and be big supporters of the show. Regardless, if you just tune in, I am amazingly grateful. You guys could be watching a million other things on YouTube or Netflix, and you're taking time out of your day to be a part of the show. And so I am forever grateful for it. All right. With that said, Paul, thank you for being here, sir. I appreciate it so much. I've been trying for so long to be able to get you on the show. And it's a huge honor for me to be able to have you here. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to you. We'll go ahead and put your presentation up. I'll even switch the camera. It's back over to you, and the stage is yours, sir.
Very good. Thank you. Thanks a lot. So good morning, good afternoon, and to Willie in Australia, good grief, Willie. It's middle of the night there, your time. So I have wanted to do some of these shows for a while as well, as David said, but as soon I basically promised him as soon as I retired that I would do so. I am retired. As everybody knows, that's a semi-retirement. It's a retirement in principle. How's that? So, but I'm going to stay active in the industry. So what I want to do, I'm just going to jump in. I wanted to talk about transient events. Everybody talks about drilling optimization, and we say, oh, what's the best weight and rotary speed to run, or what's the best flow rate? And there's a lot of programs that try to maximize ROP on an instantaneous basis. It turns out when I look at failures, by the way, if you drill a whole section in 2 hours faster, that's great. But if half the time you wind up with failures of the BHA and you have to make a trip, that basically negates any gains that you've ever had. So what I've looked at is transient events, failures that have come from those kind of transient events, and kind of what could go wrong. So I don't want people to back away from optimization, if you want to call it that, in terms of adjusting parameters, but just recognize sometimes it's the 1 second event that's more important to you. So, all right, well, let's just jump into those. So what are some of the transient events? One of my favorites, drilling interbedded formations. PDC drill bits historically were really difficult to drill into hard rock, soft rock. If it was uniformly hard, you could figure out how to do it. If it was uniformly soft, no problem. It's just these layers of interbedded rock that cause a lot of problem. The other one that's a favorite of mine is compensation of tool joints going through a rotating head. I think that's underappreciated in the industry. I'll show you why. I think a lot of dysfunction happens that we don't recognize that's where it came from. Going to bottom, if you think about every 90 feet or sometimes even more, I have to transition from being off bottom at full flow, full rotary to go to bottom. Those kind of events can cause all kinds of dysfunction. So I always think of it as like landing a plane. It's easy to take off. It's a lot harder. It takes a lot more skill to land. And we do this every 90 feet. So it's not something that we just have to do once. Slide to rotate transitions. I'm going to show you some interesting modeling data that will hopefully open the eyes of several people that you don't realize you don't know what you don't know. How's that? It's if you just look at surface data, slide to rotates are no big deal. If you look at downhole data and if you look at downhole modeling of that, you can see some events that are just eye-opening. It's simple things like downlinking. We change the flow rate, that affects the downhole weight. It affects pipe buckling. Flow rate affects pipe buckling. So just the changes in flow rate are important, and we often don't make any adjustments for that when we do that. Auto driller instability, one of my other favorite topics. It's around how do I get if I'm going to automate a system, how do I make the auto driller itself stable so that when I put a layer on top of that I know that the whole system works. So the last one I'm just going to mention briefly, I probably the least amount of time because it's deserving of its entire talk and by itself, is bit stalls, motor stalls, and top drive stalls. So, and those are three separate kind of events, even though they're all related. So, all right, well, let's just pick the first one. So drilling interbedded formations. This is a vacation photo from my wife had to put up with me stopping at every road cut and taking pictures until we found the really good one. So this is Helper, Utah. And those black layers here are, if we can see it. Okay, so these black layers are cold seams, very soft. You can see that they're weathered easily. That's why they're undercut. There's a cold seam, cold seam, cold seam, and this is all in about 100 feet. The light colored material is limestone and the yellow is sandstone. So I'm drilling interbedded back and forth and substantially different hardnesses. So why do I care? Well, I need high weight. If I run high weight in the soft formation, I'll get high penetration per revolution. But then when I transition to the hard rock, I'm taking a very big deep depth of cut, and I will break those cutters on the nose. So if I run low weight in the soft formation, that's great. It slows down. But then when I get to the hard rock, the bit slows down even more, and I go into reverse whirl, because reverse whirl at the drill bit is a function of penetration per revolution. So that's not good. I don't like the first one because I break the cutters. I don't like the second one because I start to vibrate. So if I run high weight on bit in the hard formation and then I drill off into the soft, I overload the cutters on either side of the nose. And we'll show that here in a second. So the other issue is in terms of these transient events, they occur in less than an inch, less than a second. Okay, so even if you even had a super diligent driller, you cannot react fast enough to avoid the damage. You've got to come up with a system that will do that. So first off, you have to understand the problem. So there's been a couple of papers. I put references down here for several SPE papers that you might want to read for follow-up. But here's the kind of the quick diagram of I'm drilling soft rock at a high penetration per revolution. I'll drill into the hard streak, and just a few cutters are hitting the hard streak. So they take big depths of cut and they overload those cutters. And you see what happens when I overload the nose right here. That's typically from drilling into the hard stringer. When I drill the other way, when I'm in hard rock and I'm drilling off into soft, these cutters in the nose are now underloaded, but I'm overloading the shoulder and the inside, and we'll show that. So here's breaking these cutters in half. I lovingly call these Oreo cookie breaks. It's when you buy the Oreo cookie, it breaks the black cookie part, which is representative of the diamond, and the squishy stuff inside is like the tungsten carbide behind it, and it gives way. So, all right. So let's run this animation for the first one. This is some from an SPE paper that we just presented at the annual technical conference. Here is the load per cutter. It's an animation with a compliant drill string. We don't have any depth of cut elements, but this is running constant weight on bit. You see the surface here, constant weight on bit. Whoa, right there, we just drilled into the hard stuff. And for less than a second, we overload the nose, right? So notice we're running around 1,000 pounds per cutter here most of the time. And we got just that one little event is 3,000 pounds per cutter, and particularly right on the nose. So, you know, it's not the average that's getting us, it's those peaks. And that's all it takes to break a cutter. Once I break it, of course, I can't get it back until I pull the bit out of the ground. So now we're going to drill. You can see we're making progress here. We're going to drill from this hard rock, and everything's fine, by the way. Here we are in weight on bit mode, and we on average we got still about 1,000 pounds because we're still running the same weight on bit, right? So we're going to drill here, and we're going to transition into back to any second now. We'll switch over.
Hurry up and wait.
Yep. There we go. There it goes. So we underloaded the nose. You saw that little deal. And then what did we do? We overloaded the cutter right in all the way through number one and out here on the outside. And then it settles back down. Everything is good. So you look at this and you go, well, my average is about 1,000 pounds, but I had a peak of 3,000 on the nose. This would tell you I have a peak of 7,000 right inside the cone, that cutter number one. By the way, notice this doll has cutter number one's damage, and you go, but we never damaged cutter number one. Yeah, interbedded. It's very understanding why you can see the damage there. Okay. Okay. So now, what do I do about that? How can I fix this? So this is the essence of that paper we were just talking about. What I'm going to do is run, instead of running a constant weight on bit, I'm going to run a constant surface ROP. I still have a compliant drill string, so there is some string stretch that will change, and that makes it more difficult. In fact, so what we're going to do is we're going to add depth of cut elements to the drill bit. We're going to put them features on the drill bit to limit the maximum depth, because if it drill into hard rock, we'll go ahead and start this thing up. Okay, so here we are. We're drilling along. We're drilling, by the way, and we're going to drill at a controlled ROP right here. Okay, you can see this ROP is slower than the other. That's important. I need to, again, I'm trying to control the ROP just when I need to, but I'm going to do so so that it doesn't overload those nose cutters. Okay, so here are the loads. You see the load per cutter is quite low. Looks pretty good. We're going to drill into our transition into the hard rock. Oh, look at there. That was the transition right there. It very little change. We didn't have this huge peak right here, right? Because we didn't approach it at a very high depth of cut. Okay. Now, by the way, the other analogy that I like to use here is dipping a chip into your guacamole. I love guacamole. So guacamole is hard. It's hard enough to exceed the structural limits of the chips. You dip a chip in there, and you want to go maximum guacamole per chip right up to the structural limit. Same thing. We want the maximum penetration per revolution right up to the structural limit. But you can see here by running in ROP mode, I limit the overshoot of those little transient events right here and putting depth of cut elements on. So if you read the paper, you'll see there's every case with and without a compliant drill string, and with and without depth of cut element. So it's a pretty complete paper, and well worth reading if you take a look. Okay, transients. That's one again.
You did have these two questions that didn't come up
already. What about optimized ROP in a safe environment for the BHA? So what you have to decide in terms of what's the best ROP to run, that depends on how hard the hardest streak is. So think about it. The soft stuff doesn't hurt anything, right? I don't have to worry about drilling in and out of 5,000 psi to 7,000 psi. It's when I drill into a hard streak. If it's a 15,000 psi hard streak, I can take a bigger depth, bigger penetration per revolution than if it's a 20,000 or 30,000. So I need to know something about those rocks. Sometimes I don't actually have their strength. Unconventionals US here, we don't do logs for a lot of stuff. But then again, we drilled 100,000 wells, so we actually have a pretty good idea where the hard streaks are. What you have to look at is that hard streak, how hard is it? And did I break the bit last time? If I did, I'm going to back off the ROP when I entered. That's the deal. If I break the nose, I'm going to back off on the ROP when I enter. If I break down the outside, I'm going to back off on the ROP as I'm exiting. Okay. What was the other question?
It was just kind of a comment.
Setting up real-time auto-detected founder point. Oh yeah. So there's a lot to be said for what I'll call roadmaps. And roadmaps, you do this work and you say, here's my hard sections, here's the intervals of interest, and I need to set up a roadmap for that so that I don't that I know what's coming, if you will. You can't. It's like going down the mountain road. You can't get into the curve and then hit the brakes. You got to hit the brakes a little ahead and anticipate that. So that's what roadmaps are really good for. So you can figure out what your drill bit is capable of. So, all right.
What was the last comment from again?
MSE real time with downhole parameters, it can. If you've got downhole MSE, absolutely, you can pick up a lot of this stuff. If you've got downhole MSE, you also have downhole torque, downhole weight, and you'll see those peak events. What I will tell you is if you look at, and I've got data that shows that with a in-bit sub, but the peak load at the drill bit, the peak torque at the drill bit, it goes up a little bit. It doesn't go up by a factor of 3 or a factor of 7 like you see, because I'm only loading 1 or 2 cutters. So that's the value of doing the modeling. It gives you a better insight into what really is getting exceeded when we exceed that structural limit. So, yeah.
Okay. So Ali told me, David, the comments are questions too, to hear Paul's expertise. So hopefully we're doing that. And guys, if anybody else has any questions, am I still on mute? I probably am. Sorry, I was coughing earlier. All right, if you guys have any other questions, feel free to ask questions as we're going through. So we don't have Paul forever, but if you've got questions, be sure to go ahead and ask them.
Well, certainly, I'll try to answer them as we go. No problem with that. So the next transient kind of event that I want to talk about, and again, this one is one I really am surprised. We've been running rotating heads for quite some time now. We run them almost in every unconventional well, and now even spilling over to most conventional wells as well. So here's a setup of a dual element rotating head. The elements are in red. They're the rubber elements. I'm squirting a tool joint through that element as it goes through, and then it squirts through the next one as well, right? So the idea here is it takes some load to squirt through. And just to get an idea of what load it takes, I'm going to look at this chart here on the top right. Here we are in ROP mode. So we're going to run at a constant ROP when the tool joint is going through. And there's the 3 constant ROPs we ran. And you see this spike in surface weight. And you go, well, that's terrible. That's I'm adding weight to the drill bit. And the answer is no. Here's downhole weight, and you see they're essentially constant. They're a constant downhole. That weight is just the indicated from the surface because it took some of the hook load off to squirt the tool joint through, but it didn't get downhole. All right. So what's this look like in real life? here is a well that ExxonMobil drilled in Argentina. Again, there's a paper. It's one of these papers. I forgot. I didn't put which one it's from, but you'll see it. If you look in the green shaded area is the ROP trace, and we're running a constant wait on bit. Here's the yellow. I mean, that's pretty good control on wait on bit. That's not too bad. But you see, there's some dips in ROP. Well, it's just hard rock. Everybody knows that's what it is. So if I had a little hard streak. In fact, a driller gets a hard streak. Sometimes he'll go, oh, I see that hard streak. Let me go ahead and add 5,000, 10,000 pounds to get through it. And then it squirts through it's really the tool joint. It squirts through. Suddenly I got 10,000 pounds weight on bit that I didn't really want. Okay. If I run and if I do this, by the way, I wind up with motors that look like this chunked. This is a hot hole motor. So there's a lot of damage, but we were running 3 failures, 3 BHAs in the lateral, and each one of these motors came out looking like this, barely held together. And by going to a constant ROP, you see this is running an ROP mode, we could actually get a better, faster average ROP. In other words, going from like 60 minutes per stand to something like 20 minutes, okay, 3 times the ROP. Now, what you see is that because you're not overloading the motor when it goes in and out of those transitions, we wound up with much less stator damage. Again, it is hot hole. It was going to always be damaged, but this isn't nearly as bad. And this is one run. This is the one single run versus 1/3, if you will, of the original hole. You can see the same thing. These little blips right here. This is weight on bit, and you see 3 blips per stand. What could that possibly be? Well, those are tool joints, right? And in fact, you see this little double blip. That's because that was a 2-element rotating head. If you look a little further, so this is one of the more recent papers, 214997. What you see here is the tool joints are indicated in blue, each one of these graphs. What I really want to point out is this is lateral vibration at the drill bit. So this is a memory tool in the drill bit. And guess what you see? I hit a tool joint, and when I hit the tool joint, I get an increase in lateral vibration. In fact, watch this one. This one tool joint right here, I more than doubled the vibration at the bit. That's whirl, okay? Same thing. Look at this tool joint right here. I more than doubled the vibration, and it's persistent. The tool joint only lasted for a few seconds, but the vibration it's got a hysteresis to it. You start creating whirl, it stays in whirl, and it stays in whirl until you pull the bit. So this is from a bit whirl standpoint. Again, I don't see this at the surface. I don't know whether it's whirling or not. I may, and I certainly don't understand it unless I look at this 1 second or faster data. This is a similar deal with stick slip, and this is RPM at the drill bit, and you see more stick slip, more stick slip, more stick slip, and here's the zoomed in version of that. What you see is happening is that I've got those transitions. I'm adding or taking away 5,000 or 10,000 pounds of weight on bit, and then I add it all back in a square wave. So that's just exciting my stick slip, and I do that 3 times a stand. So is this a problem for you or not? The only way I can tell you is go look at your 1 second data or faster. This downhole data was phenomenally insightful to be able to understand what was going on, not just downhole, because this lateral vibration, we'd never pick it up at the surface. Even in the MWD tools, which might be 50 or 100 feet away, you may not see what was going on at the drill bit. All right.
I thought you were going to say this is a problem if you have tool joints.
If you have tool joints, it is. If you have rotating heads, it is. If you don't have both of them, you're probably okay. It just seems to be less of a problem. If you're drilling 200 or 300 foot an hour, it doesn't seem to be as bad in the faster you go. I think you just got enough inertia, you just go right on through. But
would that be then the potential of having like an RCD that's kind of like worn out?
Oh, you definitely see that. You see when I put a brand new RCD in, that I've seen as much as 20,000 pounds to squirt the first one through, and then over time it gets to 10,000, and then it gets down to 7,000 and 5,000 because it wears out, obviously. So how tight is the rubber element? And this is even without back pressure. If you add back pressure, if you're actually doing MPD, then that's going to add additional loads because the tool joints are bigger, so there's more contact area around it. So,
I mean, is that another way to be able to tell if your RCD is going?
You can,
like,
yeah,
like
oh,
if
absolutely,
it's wearing out.
Absolutely. You can see the change in that step, and you won't see that step. It'll just be a drop off in ROP, unless you're running an ROP mode. If you're running ROP constant, then the weight on bit will go up, but it'll go up a little bit less, a little bit less. So it could become a very good diagnostic.
So we've got a couple of questions that have come in.
Okay.
Right. But then there's also others here. So I think with this one.
Advanced sensors and feedback, PID control, constant torque. Oh, man. Yeah. So I tell you what, I've looked at most auto drillers do not actually drill at a constant torque. They do torque as a limit. And if you exceed that limit, it'll either disengage the auto driller or stop the drum. Just depends on which auto driller. They don't really do like a proportional control, like, hey, the torque's going up a little bit or down a bit. The other is, don't forget, that's the surface torque. What I really want is the downhole. So what I would like is downhole torque. Well, the best measurement for that is differential pressure, assuming that the tear process was good. I can see the differential pressure go up, and I can see it come back down. In fact, when I talk about running in ROP mode, I leave the differential pressure and the torque settings, those limits, at the same value that we've been running, so that if I happen to drill into a hard streak at that ROP, it would not cause me a problem, because I'll see that it'll be my safety limit. Sorry.
Let's see. There was this one here.
If a plane, a PDM is in the BHA, the differential pressure will tell. Yes, absolutely. The differential pressure is a really good indicator of torque, without a doubt, and again, weight on bit as well. So the only thing about running in differential pressure mode, if I'm trying to do a PID control loop like the auto driller in differential pressure, the time delay on the signal is about 20 or 30 seconds. So differential pressure goes up downhole, 20 or 30 seconds later, I see it at the surface, and then I respond to it. And by the time I respond to it, I'm already back into the next thing. So it's very difficult to get an auto driller to be stable. No control system likes delays in the feedback. And the ROP has essentially zero delay. ROP is just drum speed. So, if I command it to do 120 RPM, 120 feet an hour, the drum will rotate at some RPM to give you that exactly. And it's millisecond kind of delay. So that's very stable. Weight on bit, it's a 5 or 10 second delay. Differential pressure is 30-second delay. You know that when you turn the pumps on and flow comes straight up, and it can take 20 or 30 seconds for the differential pressure to stabilize. So it's very difficult to control on those others. I use them more of a safety limit. So individual cutter modeling, yeah, we talked about that. We'll come back to that. What's that? With a spring load? Spring-loaded sub. There's all kinds of compliant elements in the BHA, and I used to think, those would be great. Careful. I think you need to model that and see. The reason I say that, you be careful. If I add extra compliance, I'm in a hard rock. I'm drilling, 60,000 pounds weight, and it drills off into the soft rock. If I put a spring element there, when it drills off, the bit's going to squirt forward, and I'm going to overload those cutters even more. So compliance, if you look at the paper that I mentioned on modeling cutter loads, we modeled it without any drill string compliance. And man, in ROP mode, it is beautiful. It's really, really good. Which is why the hint that what I want to do is make the ROP of the drill bit be close to constant as I can. that's what depth of cut elements do for you. They keep you from exceeding those peaks. So, no variations of tool joints when drilling with a Kelly and a rotary table. Yeah, Robert, you probably remember when we ran rotary tables and Kellys, don't you? Yeah, that's true. Well, that's those things. We weren't running RCDs, and as we started running RCDs, I think this is underappreciated. I don't think people realize how much the loss in ROP and exciting all of these extra things, like I can excite stick slip 3 times per stand, I can excite bit whirl 3 times per stand, and they can persist to the end of the stand until I come off bottom. So it's not, the driller might say, oh, I saw it and I responded in 5 seconds. And a lot of time they are very good, better than I would ever be doing that job. But the deal is that's too late. I've already done the damage, and that will just continue. So torque limiter is for pipe limits, and surface torque is higher than that. Yes, good point on the torque limits. If you drill off into something hard, I don't know if you even noticed the when we were doing the animations, we drilled into hard stuff, the actual torque went down. Why? That's just harder rock. And you go, why did the torque go down in hard rock? And that's because the ROP went down so much. So ROP goes down so much that the torque goes down with it. But it's still a step. And remember, transients, what I'm focusing on here is not just the steady state, but what's happening when I have the transients.
Robert.
Squirting tool joints or rotating cause variation in weight torque also, which is more problematic. Ooh, I think it's weight. I don't think, a rotating head has a bearing on it, so it doesn't really change there's no torque drag to speak of, if that's the question you're asking. Now, when I change the weight on bit by 10,000 pounds, I will change the torque at the drill bit a lot. By the way, if I'm already running buckling, which in most cases, these long laterals, we run buckled all the time. But now I squirt in and put an extra 10 or 15,000 pounds on top of it. Once you buckle the drill string, it has hysteresis too. It doesn't immediately unbuckle just when you take that weight off. Once you buckle, you guys have done that. You buckle a long slender rod and you take the weight off a little bit, it's still buckled. It didn't quit, right? So again, these things are really important to us. So
you want to jump back into the presentation?
Yeah,
we'll start some of these. We'll
okay.
Start.
Yeah,
we'll come back. We'll come back.
So I do want to show. We wrote up when I was at ExxonMobil. Several of us said, "Hey, what are we going to do?" And the answer was, "We see the tool joints going through the rotating head. We will give instructions and training to the drillers to run in ROP mode, and we'll set the ROP at whatever average ROP had been. So if we're drilling 57 feet an hour, we'll set it for 57 foot an hour, and we'll raise the weight on bit, the surface weight on bit set point up out of the way." So you look at this graph here. Here's an example of doing that. Here's the set point in black and the surface weight on bit set point. You raise it up out of the way. Here's the tool joint going through and then coming back. You've got plenty of time. You can do this 2 or 3 feet ahead because there's a variation in pipe length. You don't know exactly where the tool joint is going to come, but you can raise that weight on bit set point up as long as first thing you do is set the ROP. So we did that, and we did that manually for quite some time. My unofficial count was that the drillers caught about 2/3, and about 1/3 of the tool joints got through anyway. And again, I do not. I don't want anybody to give any grief to drillers. They got way more things to do than the little trivial things that we give them. However, it tells you if I couldn't automate that seems like a really good idea to automate. And so we challenged several vendors to do so. One of them is in this paper right here that did this, in fact. And I would say they were doing tool joint compensation before. They followed the procedure that we had written up and put in the SBE paper that Exxon followed. which I like even better. And you'll see that if you look at this paper, again, just presented, you'll see what they did. They automated it so they know where the tool joint is, and then they put a little bit of a boundary in front. So they say, hey, I want to go to ROP mode before the tool joint gets there, and I want to come away from ROP mode after the tool joint exits. Not, I don't want to be in the middle of it, if you will. Okay, so take a look. I think I have not run a rig with this automation system on it yet, but I've looked at a lot of their data, and I like it. So I think it's the right thing to do. And I do know, again, there's other vendors, other drilling contractors that are trying to do this as well, because I challenged several of them to do so. So anyway, automation, that's pretty cool. Let's talk about going to bottom. Here's a great example. This is again, a recent paper about going to bottom. This is time across the bottom axis, and I think that's about 2 or 3 minutes here across. And this is the manual process of going to bottom. And, we start at different heights, and we go at different rates, and then we do a pause, and then we go down, and, we got to kind of everything. We do fast connections and slow connections. The value of automation is I pick up until the breakover. So here I am, this is what my block height was, and there's some variation there, but you look at the slope down and the consistency here. So automating this going to bottom practice doesn't mean that it's going to be better, but because it's consistent, I can look at what's going on downhole. I can look at what's happening in the surface data, and I can then fine tune it much, much better. This process that's not in control, even if you give me an instruction, and good friend at Exxon said, I said, well, here's our procedure for going to a bottom. And he said, how do you know they're following that? And I said, well, because when I'm on the rig, that's what they do. And he said, when you're not on the rig, what do they do? And I said, well, I don't really know. But if you look at this 1 second data, you see what happens. And in fact, some of the recommendations that we made, I've been wrong before, but some of the recommendations could not be followed. It didn't work the way I thought it was. And so the driller, he knows his job. The job is make this drill bit, you make a hole in the ground. And so they compensated for whatever our rules were. When you program a rig in what we call automation, you're really setting a set of parameters. When you program it, it will do exactly what you tell it to do. Now, the nice thing is it'll do exactly what you tell it. If you're wrong, it'll real quickly tell you they're wrong. And we had that. So it's okay. It's faster learning because it's so consistent. One of the papers here, this was at Matt Isabel, and I don't remember who else was on this paper. There's a bunch of people on this paper. He really focused on these segmenting the stands into, he called drill a stand down. And, here was the approach bottom. Here was cycling, a little bit of back reaming, and then the drill, and here's the tool joints showing, etc. And he's got each one of those. This is the kind of time breakdown that you need to do if you're going to say, well, I need to just look at all of these going to bottom events. Again, this is maybe 2 minutes out of a couple of weeks of drilling, and I need to look at just those little 2-minute segments. That's really important. Now, is this important to us? I mean, how about this variation here? What's wrong with that? Anyway, and the answer is, this is a paper that we wrote on borehole quality, and isn't that a pretty pattern? I just think that's gorgeous. It really looks nice. This is, the bit is whirling off bottom, and once it starts whirling off bottom, then and it's a bit housing motor. So it's a bit housing motor, and I'm getting this spiral pattern going down the hole. And you see the overgauge hole sections right here. What happened was I was going to bottom. Here's my going to bottom. I started off with lateral vibrations, okay, really high, and then they tapered off toward the end of the stand. But this real high vibration off bottom gave me the chance for the bit to whirl and dig in. These are gauge cutters, if you will, that dug into the side of the holes. Why it looks so pretty like that. So pretty in one sense of the word. How's that? So
yeah.
But so the big deal is, how do you control that? It's your going to bottom practices. How fast do you rotate off bottom? How which I'm counting part of the going to bottom. How much time do I spend there, etc. So, and again, I need to segment the times into small blocks so they're similar kind of events. So there, I can't remember now who the quote came from, but one of the comments was, if you can create a mathematical model of something that mimics, if you will, the real data that you get, it gives you a deeper understanding. It lets you know you actually understand something. So, I showed you a model of the auto driller that was based on some guesses about how the auto driller worked, until I fine-tuned it enough that it matched the actual data that we got. Here's an example that is from the slide to rotate transition. So you got we have an open source model. Anybody who's not a part of the open source drilling community, look up OSDC, or Roman Shore at Texas A&M is currently the host for that. But Greg Payette, Roman, and I started this effort for open source drilling community, and he's got a couple of models in there now, always looking for more models and more validation data. But this is the ExxonMobil model that was donated. You've got a downhole motor here, and then you've got some drill collars and some more drill collars and drill pipe, and it comes all the way to the surface. Okay, so it's a lump spring mass kind of thing with power being input at the motor right here. Okay, so let's just watch what happens. I'm going along and I'm doing a slide drilling, and then I start to rotate. I don't come off bottom. Okay, if I look at the surface, I see a very smooth event, no big transitions. I mean, this is great. I turn the rotary on, and the torque just comes up very gently like this. It maybe overshoots a little bit, and then it's just fine. That's no problem. Downhole, for literally less than a second, I had an 18,000 foot-pound torque spike. That's because I've got axial stiction, if you will. I've got compression in the drill pipe that's been stored up. And when I break that free, I break that friction free by starting to rotate, the drill bit, or the drill pipe extends, and the drill bit goes forward, lurches forward. I don't see that I don't see that at the surface. I only see that downhole. 18,000 foot-pound spike right there. And again, that's every time go slide to rotate, if I don't come off bottom before I do that. And I don't see it at the surface. So if you look at it, here's another deal. Here's my slide. This is the top drive RPM, and then we start rotating at 10 RPM here, just to get an idea. Mud pumps have been on forever. And what you see here, here's the bid RPM. It was 100 or 90 RPM, and it goes to 100 RPM whenever I add the top drive RPM. So that's what I see at the surface, and it's like no big deal. Everybody's happy. When I look at downhole, bit RPM went minus 100 and something RPM, 110 RPM for just a second. Okay, what does that mean? And I'm sorry, that's the stator. So that's the outer housing of the stator has gone backwards. I'm winding up the drill string, but I'm unwinding and trying to unscrew everything below the stator. Bearing housing. Anybody ever had a failure or a back off or a twist off event at the bearing housing connection? It's very likely related to one of these stall events where the bit has stalled and the motor has enough power, it just winds up the drill string. But if I was in a slide mode, I've got, I've got a bend in my motor and I've got a curvature in the hole. And so I'm now backing it off, and I've kind of anchored that drill bit in the bearing housing. I've anchored that in the rock. And so I'm unscrewing everything below the stator. So positive torque above the stator, negative torque below. And again, how do we fix those kind of things? Pay attention to the connection practices and the slide to rotate transitions. All right. Oh, simple things. we downlink all the time, right? If every time you change, in order to downlink, I usually change the flow rate. Yes, I can do a downlink with RPM, but most of the time we do a flow rate change. Look at this data here. This is surface data in blue in this middle. I'm looking at this middle graph. Look at point 1 here. The surface data, surface weight on bit, and the downhole weight on bit are lined up very nicely. Okay, and right here, this is flow rate in black. Right here at point 2, I changed the GPM from 500 to 450. That's not a big change. I don't need to re-tear or anything. I don't need to worry about, right? Except look at what happened. Here's my surface weight on bit went down, and then it goes back up. And what's going on? Look at that now. I've got a spread between surface and downhole because I have less lift, hydraulic lift, pushing me out of the hole. So think about this. I've got flow around the outside of the drill pipe, and that flow is pushing against the drill pipe. And you can do it on pressure and shear or any way you want to do it. There's several things. When I have a certain flow rate, I'm going to have a certain pressure that's tending to push me out of the hole. Okay. If I lower the flow, that pressure decreases, which means my downhole weight on bit goes up. You see this right here. Downhole now separated from the surface. We lowered the flow again. We lowered the flow again, and we see this separation continuing to get worse and worse. Okay. Another way to look at this is here is surface weight on bit and downhole weight on bit versus flow rate. 500 GPM in red, things are lined up very nicely. When I drop to 400, I've got at least a good 10 or 15,000 pounds additional weight downhole. And I didn't account for that. I'm only measuring, most of the time, I'm only measuring surface. Do I need all these downhole gauges? It'd be nice to have them, but if I understand the physics, I don't have to do, I can just control that before I change the downlink. Okay. If you look at this is weight on bit when I'm on bottom. If you just look at hook load off bottom, look at these. This is great. So here we are. We're off bottom, and this is block speed. So here we are right here coming off bottom, and look at here is I can't read the number, 400 and something GPM.
496 GPM.
Yeah, good round number. 496. We drop it to 248, and then we drop it to 0. And look what happened. At 496, my hook load was 198,000 pounds. I dropped it to 240, it's 221. Okay. I drop it to 0 and it's 243. So that's about a 45,000 pound change in hook load just by the flow. Okay. That's important. It's important for pipe buckling because I have more, I'm at full flow. I'm zeroing the quote weight on bit off bottom, but I have 45,000 pounds of pipe compression that I hadn't kind of accounted for. So it's important in buckling. It's important when I do downlinks and I change the flow, or even if I'm in the middle of a stand and I change the flow. So all those things come into play. My other favorite one. So here's an auto driller. This is a 5-minute window. We're gonna look, and green is. We'll go ahead and play the video here. So this is a screenshot, a rig I was on in Arkansas. It's in the SB paper, this first one. You see the ROP is going 0 to 100, 0 to 100, right? If you look at the drum, even if you don't have digital data, you just look at the drum. Start, stop, start, stop, right? I've been on many rigs in Oklahoma with the old band brakes, and you hear them squeak and then stop, and then squeak and stop, right? You can hear that miles away. That's not what you want. If I just change the gain on the auto driller so that I get a steady, I don't overshoot off and on, I get a much more steady let off of the drum. Okay, that's what I want. Why do I care? You thinking, doesn't it all get all downhole? It does. If I have very high ROPs at the surface, I'm buckling the drill pipe. If I'm putting torque spikes into the drill string so I can excite stick slip from the auto driller. Okay. How fast, if this is changing the gain, this is that 5-minute window. We were going along, things were reasonably stable here. We raised the gain, and literally in a matter of seconds, you see that it paints the screen, and then we lower the gain. In a matter of seconds, it goes away. So if you're on a rig and you have access to the gains settings, and this is response tuning, this is a happens to be, I think it's an Omron controller, but some of these systems you can control the gains, others you cannot. I have been pushing the industry, particularly for those that you can't control the gains. I've been pushing for a automatic gain control, so a scheduler that looks for instability and lowers the gain when that happens and raises the rest. And there's a paper, one of the papers is on that as well. So this is just, do we understand what's going on here? Is you can do anything with Excel, I tell you, almost. This is an Excel spreadsheet simulating.
You made this in Excel?
This is Excel, yeah.
Of all the things you've done today, this is the one I'm most impressed with. Good gosh.
Well, you go with what you know, right? And so I haven't programmed in Python and Anger yet. I still need to learn that. But so what you see, I'm painting the screen right here. This is ROP. I just lowered the gain. You see this right here? Let me go back as I was talking. Let's go back here.
Sorry.
So yeah, that's right. Gain of 2 is a dimensionless number, but a gain of 2 here, high gain, all right? And I'm overshooting, undershooting, overshooting, all right? I'm sitting here, right here. We're going to lower the gain. We're going to lower it down. There we go to 0.5. Immediately, things settle out. Now, back in the background, I've got, I'm drilling rock that has like a 10% variation in rock strength. And there we are. We raise the gain back up. And you see here, again, that's a 1 minute. So within less than a minute, I'm at full instability again, right? I'm hitting my limits. Now, here's what's cool. Change the ROP set point. This is the top green line right here. And it makes sense that I would clip the peaks, but watch what else happens. As I change the ROP set point on this particular auto driller, it takes smaller steps. And that's because that particular auto driller is, the way it determines the step size, it looks at the ROP set point. And if let's say your weight's off by 10%, it will take 10% of the ROP, because it's really controlling drum speed. When it's all said and done, it's going to control the drum speed. And so it'll lower the drum speed by 10%. If I'm drilling at 300 foot an hour and I have the ROP set point for 300, everything's fine. If I'm drilling at 10 foot an hour, like a hard streak, and I still leave that at 300 foot an hour, I'm taking 10% of 300. I'm taking 30. I'm going, 30, and then I overshoot, and then I go to 0, and then I go to 30, and I'll go back and forth. So anyway, there's room for both of these. And is this a problem or not? Tell you what, if you're painting the screen with ROP, with differential pressure, if you're painting the screen with torque, and if it's torque and no ROP changes, then it's likely it's just stick slip. But if you see the ROP changes as well, then go and look at the auto driller and figure out how to tune it up, and engage some of the smart auto driller guys that are working in that area. Okay, so here's some field data. In this particular auto driller, here's stick slip going on in blue. That's the torque signal. And the green is the auto driller signal for ROP. And you can see that we're exciting the stick slip here. And again, we've talked about the damage that we do to a motor whenever we have these real high stall events, etc. So, all right. Last transient event that I'm going to talk about is bit stalls and motor stalls. And this is the one I could have an entire discussion on as well. Great couple of papers here about looking at downhole data. This is the downhole differential pressure and versus what you see at the surface. So remember I said you had like a 20 or 30 second delay. It's also has very high damping. It does not respond to these instantaneous pressure changes. So here's what's going on downhole in blue, and here is what I record at the surface every second. And most of you think, oh man, 1 second data, that's just hard to handle. That's a lot of data. Nope, not good enough. If you're going to pick up stalls of the bit stall and motor stall and the top drive, you actually probably need 5 to 10 samples per second. Okay. What I like about this deal right here, you see this slope where the differential pressure is going up, going up, going up. What's happening? The bit has stalled right here. The bit is quit turning, and I'm winding up the drill string. And as I wind up the drill string, the torque on the motor goes up and up and up because I'm just like winding up a rubber band. So this change in differential pressure is due to the change in torque, and it's this drill string that's winding up. Finally, I get right here, and the poor little motor just can't put any more out, so it starts to bypass this rotor stator, right? And so at that point, I just get this stall event. Now that's deadly for motors, but it turns out this is too. Remember that back off events here when I when the bit stalls. Every time I have a motor stall, I had a bit stall before it. That's it, whether you see it or not. It has to happen. The bit has to quit turning. The motor can turn backwards sometimes, and other times maybe not. But the bottom line is the bit has to stop turning first, and I'm going to call that a bit stall. Okay, I need to look really closely at that. Again, the bit stops turning, and the motor is winding up the drill string backwards, and I'm backing off every joint below the stator. So that's kind of that's what we're looking at. All right, great fun. All right, so hopefully I've given you a good idea of why transients are important. Now, what do you do? What do you do about it? Well, let's record data fast enough to detect the interesting events, right? 1 sample a second is good for stick slip. It's good for going to bottom. It's good for auto driller instability and interbedded. So if you're looking at interbedded formations, you can do a lot with 1 second data. If you're going to look at motor stalls, bit stalls, and such, you really probably need 5 samples per second to 10 samples per second on the surface. Okay, you can see I have looked at events and not been able to diagnose what really happened with 1 second data, and so I'm very fortunate. I've had some 10 second or 10 hertz data, if you will, 10 samples per second data, and you can see a lot there that you can't see in the one. If you're downhole and you're studying HFTO, high frequency torsional oscillation, you know, most people are up to running downhole sensors at 1,000 samples per second. But what's interesting is there are events that are happening at 2,000 and 3,000 hertz, and so you need 5,000 samples per second if you're going to really study HFTO. So don't be surprised if you start seeing bigger files show up on your desk. That's kind of what has to happen. In fact, relative to that, so a couple of things. You need to do some quality checks. I've seen 1 second data that really it's sampled every 10 seconds, and then they just repeat, and jump up and repeat, right? It looks like 1 second data if you're zoomed out, but it is not at all. It's sample and hold, and that's dangerous to look at. So make sure that you're really getting 1 second data when you ask for it and if you pay for it. The other is you need to know how the data is averaged or calculated. ROP is a great example. So ROP is a change in block height over a change in time. As the block height moves less and less, as I get slower and slower, I need to allow enough time. Otherwise, I'll show like 0, 0, 0, 0, 100 RP, 100 foot an hour, 0, 0, 0, 100 foot an hour kind of thing. And that's not real. That's not what's actually happening. So I need to make sure I know how it's calculated and what my sampling looks like. I need to do checks on the quality particularly for me at least, weight and differential pressure. We tear those more or less every stand, and we can be off. And I've seen being off as much as 60,000 pounds. So on weight, that's serious. I mean, you think you were putting 40,000 and you're really putting 100. That's pretty deadly. So that was the end of the run. So we should be, not only should we be doing those calculations, but they need to be in front of the driller so he can see that the off bottom hook load just changed by 60,000 pounds, and he did not, he didn't drop a BHA or he didn't change the flow rate or whatever. And you go, oh, something's wrong here. I'll re-zero before I even get to bottom, because us telling them about it a week or two later is not nearly as useful as telling them real time. Segment the data by rig state. This is what we talked about. You're going to be looking at 1 second kind of events, and you need a way to focus in on those events every stand, just those alone, and upgrade the infrastructure to make sure you get that data. These files are going to get big, gigabyte files plus, and you need to have a way to handle that. So if you're looking at your IT infrastructure, make sure that they have a way to store it and display it, and that you have the tools to parse through this and be able to zoom in. My analogy is Google Earth. So I can look at Google Earth and I can see the entire Earth, and I can zoom in and zoom in and zoom in until I can see the shingles on my house. And that's seamless. I don't, there's a lot of stuff that goes on in the background. I don't know. I don't care. But boy, it sure makes it easy for me to be able to zoom in and zoom out and still keep my reference of where I am. So we need to get on with that. Analyze time-based data. If everything I've been talking about is time-based, if you look at foot-based data, which is useful because it can relate it to, measure depth, you relate it to formation changes, etc. But time-based data, all these off-bottom to on-bottom events, that's one record because it's one hole depth, and all these events happen, and they're going to give you some value. Who knows what it is? Is it the average over the last 60 seconds while it was off bottom, or whatever it is? You don't know. You need to look at time as well as foot based. Model what you measure just helps you fill in the gaps. Run structured field trials to identify opportunities. So you need to be able to run a trial. I think everybody's been through the 9th grade. I think everybody did a science fair project. You remember the scientific method. Make an observation, so that something that's interesting that looks useful to you, and then you have a proposal for what caused that event, and you go take data to find out. And then in this world, what can you do to fix it? So you run a trial to fix it and see if it actually helped. Realize this, and this is my comment to Fred DePriest more than anybody else in the industry. Most observations are not the dysfunction. I just drilled a record well, and the answer is, what can I do now? This is not, there wasn't anything wrong. There was nothing wrong with that well, but I can still improve. So yes, I have dysfunctions that I need to focus on, but I also can have record wells, and I can still continuously improve and redesign the limiters. So, okay, I've done my talking.
Well, we'll leave this over to the side.
All right.
I'll remove that one. And I'm going to turn this light on, because when we did the 2-camera shot, it came in.
All right.
The color was pretty far off. All right. So make sure that my audio is working. My audio is working. All right, guys. If you guys have got any questions from the presentation, or just questions in general for Paul, because now he is a consulting firm, right? Yep. So he's allowed to work 7 days a week.
my wife is in the studio over here, and she heard that.
So because time is limited, right? This is a great opportunity for anybody that's watching. If you want to be able to ask Paul a question, right, and you don't want to have to do a full big blown project, now's a great time to be able to get it out there. So be able to start firing those off.
I'm going to answer Ollie's right here, because I think this is a great question.
Well, I do want to be able to put in there. Bill Short, somebody who I've wanted to be able to have come on the show, is watching today. So, Bill, thank you so much for watching the show. I do appreciate it. So, thank you.
Good to see you here, Bill.
So we've got a whole bunch that are in here. So
I just picked.
You run the show. So
I'm going to pick Ollie. You talk about wired pipe being a good solution. Yes, it is. Boy,
Go ahead and click on it just so they can.
Oh, sure. Yes, it can be a good solution. One thing I warn you, you will generate gigabytes worth of data with wired pipe. Have a plan to use it. The actual cost of running the wired pipe is actually small compared to the cost of analyzing the data and doing something with it. So gear up, prepare. Otherwise, you're going to be very disappointed in the results. It's not that it's not giving you good data. It is giving it, but you don't have time to look at it because you haven't geared up to do that. So put the infrastructure in place to make sure that your wired data gets transmitted to people that have time to look at it. And probably a real-time center or some kind of support. Again, the guys on the rig floor have more than enough to do already. You don't want to overwhelm them. Now, once you figure it out, once you figure out what the dysfunctions are or what the functions are that are working, you want to improve, Then you can automate that. You can have an automatic detection. You could look at, again, if I just automate the process going to bottom, and I once every 6 months, I look at the way I'm doing that, and I make improvements, and I propagate that across the fleet of rigs that I'm running. That's great. So I have to make those changes to the operation, and I don't want to be completely drowning in data. So just that's my warning on wired pipe.
I would like to be able to add into this because I have a bit of a story to tell. So I wouldn't say it's the first time that I ever met you, but it was the first time I ever pitched a product to you at Exxon. And we had the downhole measurement tool.
Yep.
And, went through all of the stuff. And then one of your comments in it was, well, yeah, it gives you a lot of data, but I've already got, 20 gigabytes worth of data that I haven't even processed yet.
Yeah.
So I definitely agree to that point. And it's what I've told people is it's like, okay, having all of that data is like mining something. You've mined it, but not until you refined it.
You got to distill it down. Yeah.
That's where, the value and stuff comes from. So otherwise you've just got a mountain of, raw material, but like mountain of raw gold or copper or whatever you want to use the analogy. Really, is it worth much until you start
to
refine it through the process, and then can start, making actionable items on it. So I think
so.
A lot of people want a lot of data, but they're not ready to be able to drink from the fire hose. That is wire drill pipe, downhole tools, and high frequency data.
So Greg Pay at Exxon is still at Exxon as a research organization. He was kind of my counterpart in research, where I was in the operations support group in Wells Technical. He has been focusing for the last year or two on how do I create little scripts like Python scripts and all to be able to zoom in on the data that is of interest. So I can line up all of the connections, and I can watch my flow rate go up, I can watch my RPM go up, I can watch my weight on bit go up, and I can see how consistent they are and all that, because it's that kind of a tool. And that tool I get to reuse, and I get to reuse and reuse, right? So those kinds of tools they're generalist tools. It's not like a dashboard. Dashboards are good for management. They're good to let you know that I got a 5.2 minute connections, and I've just reduced it to 5.1. They don't tell you whether you were going into whirl or not, and you need to be able to dig into that 1 second data and all. So anyway, Greg, there is a paper that Greg wrote. I don't have it reference if anybody wants it, but just look at the last. It was either spring. I think it was the spring of this year. So
when the monitor wasn't working.
There you go.
Because his paper went right after ours.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So we look at the drilling conference for March in Galveston, and look at Greg Payette, and you'll see a paper there that I think is really quite good for that.
I'm gonna have to wait a long time to get Greg on the show.
Yeah, you will. He's way too young. Sorry about that. But you'll like him when you get him. So model the effect of a non-rotating protector. I have not, but there is some interesting things. So you think of non-rotating pipe protectors, drill pipe protectors. What do? They lower the torque while I'm rotating. However, they're more or less static axially. So now I trade off. I have less torque, but I can have more axial drag. I haven't really modeled to see how important, or I haven't really measured to see how important the increase in axial drag is. But it's not a completely free event, if you want to say it that way. So let's see here. Will more data ever be a bad thing? Okay. Yes, only if you don't look at it. I mean, so you got to do a couple of things. One is you've got to be able to look at the data. I don't have any problem of even storing it, and more or less, let's go back. If I have an event, sort of like the black box detectors on an airplane. Hopefully, you never look at that data. You never have to, because you don't actually have an event for it. But there'll be times when you want to go back and look, and so that's okay. If you can afford that, that's fine. But what I would say for sure is you need to have the tools to be able to access that data. And usually when somebody is looking at gearing up a project to put more data, you're taking 20-second data and you want to go to 1 second. You need to have the tools to be able to handle that. When we were taking one data point every 20 seconds, you could plot everything in an Excel spreadsheet, and everybody's got one of those, so it's real easy to do. When you start talking about 1 second data for a couple of weeks, you're talking about gigabyte files, and Excel doesn't quite like it. So you start needing to have some little scripts to be able to handle that. So,
Here's
all right. What is the transient effect of using an agitator tool on these long laterals? Is there value in trying to model the cutter loads? Yes. Short answer is by the way, there is a paper coming out on not just the loads per cutter, but the stress within the cutter. What breaks the cutter is the stress, that bending stress on the cutter itself. And we've got a paper coming out in the spring of 2025, and to talk about the stress there. As far as agitators go, there's two effects. One is I'm breaking axial friction. That's a good thing. If you're thinking about I have less transient from slide to rotate, if you want to think of it that way, because I'm agitating all the time. The agitator itself can put some serious loads at the drill bit if I've got it too close to the BHA. I didn't personally model it, but I know that some people that I worked with there at Exxon that did that, and there are definitely some good rules about how close you want to place that to the BHA and where you want it in the drill string. So yes, and that's a great use of modeling, by the way. So
here was one from John that once again talked about, given the differentiation of high frequency and downhole, the hardwired pipe.
I like this one. In fact, this is one of those cases where Greg and I had some great philosophical discussions over time. I said, I need to do all of this stuff in real time. I don't want to come back to the rig 2 weeks later and tell them what they did wrong. I want them to get the data so they can make a decision in real time. Wired pipe gives you that capability to adjust, but now I have to have the training and the recognition. So if I see a dysfunction, I see that when I went to bottom that I went into stick slip, I need to know, okay, how do I fix that for the next time I go to bottom? I mean, and we're not geared up on the sophistication of training to that level today. So what we do is we put in a well program and we say, here's your procedure to go to bottom. Or in fact, we program the rig. Again, we just tell it ramp rates for the flow rate, ramp rates. Here's the delay. Here's the flow rate. Here's, that I want to target. And I program that in. The cool thing about that is I can do that on the next well. In fact, I almost have to, because I'm not going to change while I'm drilling along. It's very unlikely I'm going to change those parameters while I'm drilling. I can't change the BHA while I'm drilling. I've got stick slip and I want bigger drill pipe. I'm not going to just go out there and stop drilling for a month while I get drill pipe. And by the way, it can be a year plus if you have to change the fingerboards and all that. So there is great value in doing this in the planning stage, and that's on the next well as opposed to the one you're on. So just recognize not all things, how do I say it? Real-time data is not fast enough. I need to have done the change in the tools that I selected, the drill pipe I selected, the lubricants, whatever. I needed to make that change back there months ago before I even started drilling the very first foot. So anyway, but yes, there's definitely room for hardwired. Yeah, let's see here. Let's do this one. Graham says ROP depends on several factors. Controlling ROP. What are we actually managing or controlling, and how are we doing it? Okay, so modern drill rigs, almost everything that I see today has an AC drawworks. So there's an AC motor, alternating current motor connected to the drawworks. If I want it to turn at 23 RPM, let's say I'm pick a number that 23 RPM is 252 feet an hour. It will the control system will output an alternating frequency so that it equals 23 RPM and that whatever ROP. That's the actual controlled variable is the drum speed. That's when I say I'm in weight on bit mode, or I'm in weight on bit control. If the weight on bit is too high, what can the driller at the surface, what can the auto driller do? It can either stop the drum, slow the drum down, speed the drum up, right? So if the drum speed is, or if the weight on bit is too high, it'll slow the drum down. If the weight on bit is too low, it'll speed the drum up. It'll do the same thing for differential pressure. It'll do the same thing for torque. So if you're in any of those other modes, there is a conversion from your signal, that the measured value, your process variable, to your controlled variable. But guess what? Even no matter what we say we are doing, it actually is ROP. It's displacement that we're moving down or picking up. All right. So when we say ROP control, that is the most direct control that I have. Now, I showed you that one paper where we had string stretch. We have compliance in the drill string. By the way, it was string stretch as well as torsional compliance was modeled there for I think it was 17,000 foot well. So even though I'm controlling ROP at the surface, I can have string stretch change as I drill into hard and soft rock. So how do I compensate for that? Put depth of cut elements on the drill bit to get it closer to a constant ROP at the bit. So, okay, hopefully I answered your question.
The next one there from Mr. Daryl Chicken.
All right, let's see. Making connection on bottom. You pick up on 2 or 3 feet. Don't drill off, make connections in less than 5 feet. Will the flow rate do to the weight on bit when you turn off the flow? Oh yeah, so yes, of course. You turn you didn't come all the way off bottom. You did take some of the load off, but you come off and take some of the string compression out. But now when you lower the flow, what can happen? I now have more downhole weight. I can have more downhole differential pressure, but I don't see it at the surface because when I lower the flow, my standpipe pressure went down. So as indicated by the way we calculate differential pressure at the surface, I didn't even see that. So yeah, those things can happen. Now we are making on bottom connections a lot, where you pick up 2 or 3 feet and you're not completely off bottom for sure. What's the best practice in that regard? I've watched people do this successfully on bottom. I think the successfulness, it depends on pulling enough of this pipe compression out of the string before you start, and don't re-tear while you're on bottom, because if you're on bottom and you have weight being absorbed and you got differential pressure, once you're out in the lateral, in a sense, you can re-tear maybe every 10 stands or something. You're not increasing the suspended weight, and you're increasing the standpipe pressure, but just a few psi per stand. So it's not a big deal if you go 5 stands before you re-tear and actually come all the way off bottom in order to get a good tear. So, okay.
Sorry. I did want to put this one up there. Bo Harden said, I'm impressed. Great presentation with common sense delivery.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And I'm going to give credit again to Fred. When I joined Exxon, one of the, we talked about this last night. One of the things that Fred said is, if you're giving advice, make sure that it's understandable and that it's clear. And if you don't have a clear advice, and it's like, oh, stick slip's bad. Oh, careful, watch out for stick slip. It sounds like you were saying something, but you didn't give anybody any advice on, hey, run bigger drill pipe, check out the auto driller, look at heave control issues. There's change the friction of the drill pipe, but if you've got friction modifiers, whatever, those are actionable events, and then you can put a sequence of what you want to do first and second. You don't just want to have events that are advice that is not actionable. So, all right, let's see here. We got a question from Robert here. Consistent drilling parameters seem key to efficiency. Tool joints complicate that. Time to go to coil tubing as a standard method. Man, okay, so coil tubing, by definition, the tubing diameter is kind of small. I do like the idea of, they have these downhole tractors, and we've done them for wireline tools, etc. But if I could control ROP downhole, with a really good tractor, that makes a lot of sense. By the way, if anybody's interested in doing something on that, let me know. I think that's a challenge to the industry for sure. But coil tubing is really small in diameter, and if you don't anchor it, you're going to have stick slip like crazy. So I worry about that, and in many of the kind of things that we do. I think, by the way, we can compensate for the tool joints just running ROP mode through the tool joint, and you won't have a problem because it's just a surface effect. It's not getting to the downhole. So, construction. Oh, there's Willie's.
There it is. William did us a solid, and
thanks, Willie. Yeah, that paper. Take a look at that paper. I think there's really a lot of insights into that paper, and again, the other paper that I mentioned was Matt Isbell's paper. It was it's listed on the slides, so you go back and look in those slides, and you'll see. We'll worry about it anyway. Just look at the slides that show the drill a stand down, the labeling, and we'll look at that. I saw something from Ben Jeffries. Let's see. Backward rotation of the motor is still winding up the drill string. Yes. Backwards rotation by the motor is winding up the drill string like forward rotation. That is true. So Ben Jeffries, I 100% agree with you that the torque at the motor is still positive. So everything from the stator all the way up is still in positive torque. You're not trying to back any of that off. However, you have some joints that you screw the motor together below the stator. So you think about that part of the motor, the bearing housing stabilizer and that lower housing section, that is screwed to the stator. And I'm trying to rotate the stator backwards. And this guy, particularly if I'm in slide to rotate where I have a bend in the hole, so I've got a bend in the hole and a bend on the motor, and they're lined up because that's what I was doing directional drilling. And now I'm trying to unscrew this top of that. So yeah, I think it's true that the stuff at the top is still in positive torque, but the stuff below the stator is negative torque. So,
all right. So there's one about auto driller here, and then we've got a question from Peach, but also want to be able to throw this up there.
Ralph, hey Ralph, comprehensive, holistic, practical. I thank you, sir. Ralph and I go back 40 years plus, I think, maybe more than that even. So. He's joining us probably from Iceland, I think, is where he is these days. So
maybe we can get him to join the show at some point.
There you go. You'll like him. So I saw. Let's see. Was it
you? So we've got a little bit of time. We're getting the 2 minute. I wouldn't say it's 2 minute, but we're getting the warning from the other party in the room.
Yeah, it's time. It is. I got you. That's fair.
So let's just finish up with a couple of these and then.
All right.
Sorry, guys. Y'all can keep asking the questions, and maybe we could just forward them on to Paul, and he can answer them later. But
you can send me an email. Today. You can send me an email. If I can answer it in a few minutes, I will. How's that? And it's paul@pastusek.com. So it's not too hard to remember that.
Not a lot of people out there trying to get pastusek.com, I guess.
Unfortunately, I have some brothers in the industry, not in this industry, but they are Pastuseks as well. So you got to be careful. Auto drillers making the auto driller smarter. Oh gosh, I want the auto driller to be unconditionally stable. If you're going to automate anything else, make sure that system is stable to begin with. So, Pete, your comment here about load modeling. Yes, we did model that at 0. There has been some work. I know some work at Baker Hughes at modeling interfacial severity at an angle. And of course, yes, it'll overload. Instead of overloading the nose, it'll overload those cutters at 45 is a 45-degree dip or whatever. It still does the overload though. It's still bad. You won't like the result. So what I would say. But yeah, it can be a lot more complicated than we showed. Transient, we talked about that one.
Oh yeah, oops,
that's all right. That's fine. Running scripts on large data. Do you think AI could be used to real time? Oh man, yeah. I think AI could help you. Could help be a real time assistant, but only for the things that you've really already studied and kind of because. Boy, we talk about AI being can just make things up. It hallucinates. And I did ask AI to give me a set of references or things to do on avoiding stick slip. And I use this as a great example. And I said, give me references. So it did, and it gave me a whole bunch of papers. And one of the papers was mine. I thought, hey, that's pretty cool. I read that, and I don't remember writing that paper. And that's pretty bad, because you're thinking, oh man, I'm really getting old. I don't even remember what I wrote. So I looked it up, and no, I did not write that paper. And then I said, maybe I just gave a talk at an industry event. So I went back through all my notes of talks and things that I'd done, and I hadn't done that either. And I came to the conclusion that the AI made up that reference. And somebody has pointed out probably what I should have had them do is go ahead and finish off and make up the rest of the paper itself, because it was a good title. It was a great title, but be careful with AI and make sure that you double check. That's what I would tell you. So anyway.
All right. So one last question here from Bill Short. How is your bit history book?
Oh gosh, we are working on. We're at the goal line to finish off a book on not just the history of drill bits, but also the how to grade dulls, how to select bits, all of those kind of things, and we are very close right now. Hani Ibrahim is doing the final edits on that, and we'll try to get it out through Elsevier. I'm going to say early next year. So,
all right. Well, that gets us here towards the end. Let's go ahead and do the giveaway real quick. So, guys, like I said, we're giving away a Gibson Force 3D printed drill bit, right? The red crocheted one, and then a box of KeyDrill goodies. I won't go through all of these, but we've got one of the Yeti cups, a hat, notebook. I think there's a thumb drive, a handful of things. Oh, where did my mouse go? There it is. So if you guys haven't gotten the chance, be sure to put in hashtag KeyDrill. Let's see, where is that? Boop, 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 boop. There it is. If you haven't had a chance to, put it in now, and then we'll go ahead and do that giveaway. Let me switch over to camera 1. There we go. Thank you guys all so much for tuning in. I have one last request, other than putting hashtag KeyDrill. Tag somebody in the comment section now who you think would benefit from this show. Just and then whoever you may think it is, a coworker, a vendor, an operator, whoever you think it would be. Let's help to be able to spread the word about this. This is a completely free resource to the industry. And so nothing like being able to pass it on to some other people out there. So something that I would greatly appreciate. All right. So we've got, 53 people have put in for the KeyDrill stuff. So there we go. We'll go ahead and add it to the screen. All right. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. Let's do the drawing. Whoever it is going to be getting a whole bunch of stuff sent off to them. So if you do win, send me a message with your contact information or over to Tracy. Oh, it's Sean.
He can scan it and see if it's made according to plan, right?
Yeah, exactly. All right. That's a topic for a whole nother day right there.
Yes, it is.
All right, Sean, thanks for watching. You've got my contact information. Go ahead and shoot me an email. Love to be able to have you guys, love to be able to get you guys that stuff over there to you. That's it for today. So next week we've got John DeWart is going to be coming on. He's going to be remote. The week after that is our Lemons race. If you want to, for whatever reason, if you would like to get your company's sticker on my race car, send me a message. We'll get a sticker. We'll put it on the race car. Take some pictures for you guys. After that, we've got John. I don't really Hucky. I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce his last name. But he's going to be coming on talking about U-turn horizontals the week after. The next week will be the IADC annual meeting, so I'll be at that. Post-election will be David Ransom Wood, who's going to be remote, talking about post-election discussion. And then December 6th, Michael Bahonik. And then December 13th, Abraham Montez. So we've got a huge lineup for the rest of the year. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you guys for everything. It's been an absolutely amazing show. And now they're saying, check out this podcast. Oh, Oh, somebody's making the comments. I thought it was a recommendation for me for a podcast to be able to check out. So somebody says, thank you so much, Paul and David. Great presentation, learning event. Have a great weekend. Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it. All right, I've got to find the buttons here. Where is it? There it is. Close out for life.
No, just cheers, everybody. I'm very happy to have done this. And if you've got any questions, send me an email. Drop me a line.
Thank you so much for doing this,
All
Paul.
right,
I really do. It only took 5 years to be able to make this happen. All right, that's it for me, guys. As always, know your industry.